Trigger warning. Viewing the following content may cause intellectual strain and swelling of logical capacity. If you suffer from perpetual rectal discomfort, viewer discretion is advised.
I believe it's important in any conversation that if we're going to truly understand each other, that the words that we use have to be understood to mean the same thing. So in that sense, what I'm going to be doing here is I asked my son to do a little bit of research. He's not very strongly rooted in feminist history. It's not something that's been a big part of his life, as he's only 15. But I asked him to do a little bit of research about it and to get at least a rudimentary understanding and a basic working knowledge of what it is, so that when we have this conversation, that he could understand where I was coming from and what I was referring to. I want to share what he's learned with you, so that you as the audience can also understand specifically what we are referring to when we say feminism during this conversation. So at this time, I'd like to ask my son to go ahead and share some of his research.
Okay, so the research that I've conducted is feminism, the history of feminism, and what it is. I'm using Britannica for our source. It's not a bias, so nobody can really say if it's completely left leaning, completely right leaning, and it's been used for many, many years to do research. So we're going to start off for what is feminism. It says, at its core, feminism is the belief in full social, economic, and political equality for women. Feminism largely arose in response to Western traditions that restricted the rights of women, but feminist thought has global manifestations and variations. So that is feminism. That's what they say feminism is and how it kind of started out as. What we have here is what is intersectional feminism. I've never heard of this, so it's going to be something new for me as well. Intersectionality is a term coined by Professor Kimberly Crenshaw in 1989 to describe how different social categories interact, sometimes resulting in compounding effects and tensions. Her paper on the subject argued that discrimination specifically against black women is different from general anti-women discrimination or anti-black racism. Instead, it involves the unique compound experience of both sexism and racism. Initially used in the context of discrimination law, the concept saw a resurgence in the 21st century among left-wing activists who broadened intersectionality to include categories such as a class and a sexual orientation. So that is what intersectional feminism is. We're going to be talking about here what second wave feminism is. For those of you that don't know, I'm just going to let you know that I didn't know this at least, there is multiple waves of feminism. So I guess there's multiple different ways of looking at it. Some people use second wave, some people use third wave, but we'll get into that a little bit later. This is second wave. This talks about the history. It says, the women's movement of the 1960s and the 70s, the so-called second wave of feminism, represented a seemingly abrupt break with the tranquil suburban life pictured in American popular culture. Yet the roots of the new rebellion were buried in the frustrations of college-educated mothers whose discontent impelled their daughters in a new education. If first-wave feminists were inspired by the abolition movement, their great-granddaughters were swept into feminism by the civil rights movement, the attendant discussion of principles such as equality and justice, and the revolutionary ferment caused by protest against the Vietnam War. So that describes what second-wave feminism is, and kind of a bit of the history on how it started. This is a third wave. The third wave of feminism emerged in the mid-1990s. It was led by so-called Generation Xers, who, born in the 1960s and 70s in the developed world, came of age in a media-saturated and culturally and economically diverse milieu. Although they benefited significantly from the legal rights and protections they had been obtained by first and second wave feminists, they also critiqued the positions and what they felt was unfinished work of the second wave feminism, or of second wave feminism. This is fourth wave. This is what is going on currently, I believe. Although debated by some, many claim that a fourth wave of feminism began about 2012 with a focus on sexual harassment, body shaming, and rape culture. Among other issues, a key component was the use of social media to highlight and address these concerns. we can get more into this topic and more into this wave on feminism, but for the purpose of this conversation, that's what I'm going to read because this is specifically what we are talking about. If you guys would like to read this, we post all the articles and all the research we do in the description, so you can go check it out for yourself.
All right. I think that Britannica, which back in my day was known as Encyclopedia Britannica and actually came on paper in books that you had to go buy and carry. that's a that's a source of information that has been used and trusted for a long, long time. That's not to say that it's not possible to have a political bias
Yes.
creep in over time. My personal belief that any organization that doesn't practice a an active culture will inevitably deteriorate. It's just that simple. You have to actively work towards maintaining any standard that is above normal, because it is human nature to think to normal. Um, Again, for the purposes of our conversation, these were just loose definitions, or descriptions rather of feminism and what they kind of represented in the movement and the rough time frames that they existed